In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, family, and welcome to another powerful episode of America in Black and White, where we honor truth, elevate voices, and illuminate the stories shaping our communities. Tonight, we gather in a moment of reflection and responsibility, a moment where mental health, education, and community empowerment intersect with the legacy of Black resilience. In a world that often asks us to shrink, tonight's guest is a reminder that healing is not only possible, but revolutionary. He is a visionary who understands that the mind is a battlefield, the community is a classroom, and wellness is a birthright. His work stands at the crossroads of therapy, creativity, advocacy, and purpose. Tonight, we welcome a man who has dedicated his life to helping others rewrite their story, reclaim their power, and rediscover their light. A man who believes and teaches that no matter how heavy the storm, how heavy the storm, the sun will come out tomorrow. This is not just an interview. This is a movement. This is a moment. This is America in Black and White, and I'd like to introduce you all to Professor C. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
I'm just excellent. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Before we get into the show, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here to talk about empowerment, to talk about connection, to talk about healing, to talk about art, which all of those things pretty much encompass my work, the way I choose to live each and every day, the way I choose to show up for the community that continues to show up for me. So thank you.
Yes, sir. And so first, I want to get into to the beginning here, where I'd like for people to get the opportunity to learn a whole lot more about you, learn your life story.
Okay.
Um, can you tell us who was Alan Michael before the world came to know you as Professor C?
Oh yeah. So I would say that life has definitely been tipsy turvy for me. But our paths are never linear. It sprouts depending on circumstances. And what I would say is that I was born in the South. I am from Faraday, Louisiana. I come from a family of healthcare workers. So being a country bumpkin up till about 10 years old, and then finally venturing up to Massachusetts, where I got the bulk of my education. But before all of that, growing up in a small town in Faraday, Louisiana, where we had probably one kindergarten, one elementary school, one middle school, one high school. So in those types of towns, everyone knows everybody, and your family is known by reputation because of your last name. Well, you're this family, you're that family. So those things are, in some regard, predetermined for you, unfortunately. Um, but what I would say is that a small town offers a greater sense of community. Smaller towns like that definitely recognize adversity. It recognizes where there might be a lack of resources, especially can recognize deficits in education. So, kind of coming from that, and then my family transitioning to Massachusetts, it was like night and day in terms of the educational system. But that's an intricate part of my work, that I recognize that in certain demographics that the education is not the same So that hopefully that's something we can get into as we can continue to talk. But aside from that, growing up from a small town, I would say that my family has always been rooted in faith. Growing up Pentecostal and Baptist in some regard, that we spend a great deal of our time in church. We spend a great deal of our time, my family, helping others in the community. My grandmother, God rest her soul, my mother's mother, Mary Lee Chest, who had passed away, was definitely a pillar in the church community. So through her work and us being involved, I got into singing. My mother pushing me to do other artistic endeavors like writing and dancing. I would say that at by age 7 is when I wrote my first poem called "Why." It was a poem rooted in recognizing how a young child comes to recognize death and recognize violence in our communities and recognize how families can sometimes go through adversity, but it's not often talked about in our communities. 7 years old when I wrote that poem, and it actually won a national poetry contest at the time. And from 7 on, poetry, singing, dancing, piano. My mother paid for me to get my first studio time, and I was probably 13, 14 years old. I recorded my first demo of 3 songs. From there, going on to meet producers and write music from age 13 to 21, being in record labels, local record labels in different cities that I was living in at the time. So the arts have always been a part of my journey. It has been the way that I have connected with others. It has been the way that I have always tried to tell my story, because what I believe is that no one can tell my story for me. I'm going to be the one to tell you my story my way. And I do just that with everything that I do. I do it from my heart. I do it with purpose, and I do it with the understanding that hopefully the message that I'm putting out into the world will reach someone and empower them to find their voice and maybe have their own stories being told in their way as well.
So tell us, what early experiences shaped your passion for mental health and human behavior?
Oh yeah, great question. So again, coming from parents that were in healthcare, on the maternal side and paternal side of my family, actually, I come from a family of CNAs, medical assistants, registered nurses. My family, on all sides, I would say, have always been about community, have always been about empowerment, have always been about helping others, because what I recognize is that I know what it's like to go without. And that's a humbling experience to recognize that sometimes that you have to go without because of circumstances. There were times in Louisiana where um, we had um, we had something happen with our water system down there, and we weren't able to have clean water for a significant amount of time down there. But seeing again how the community shows up for each other in times of need empowers me to continue to do just that. Um, I am humbled by my ability to be able to share in these experiences, but say that those experiences don't define who I am, but they certainly shape how I choose to show up for others who go through similar situations. I think in our country, I think that people often make prejudgments about who you are based on what you look like, based on how you walk, how you talk. I have this saying that even your hair follicles can rub somebody the wrong way. Luckily, I don't have them on the top of my head anymore. But I say that to say that um, people will judge you. People will try to tell you what your intent is. And I believe that kind of knowing that it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, that you're always going to have those that try to put you in a box. And that oftentimes people that come from where I come from don't have a voice often. We're not asked to raise our hand, or if we do raise our hand, no one wants to hear what we have to say. So I've decided that I'm going to kick that door down and tell you what I have to say anyway, because no one's going to silence me, and I hope that others who are looking for healing and empowerment kind of come from that same lens that by helping yourself to be a better person, you are inspiring others to do just that. I believe that you have to save yourself before you save the world. And this, who am I to tell someone else what they can do to be better if I'm not also walking in that truth? So that I would say pretty much grounds me, and it pretty much sums up the messages that I've gotten from family members over the years as well. That we welcome adversity because we recognize that growth is built in discomfort. It's those places that people don't want to go. It's those shadows, those places where people keep their head down that you need to really face. That's going to get you to that next step. But you have to be willing to get there. You have to be willing to go there, ultimately to grow.
You know what I love about that response to that question is because I agree with you when you're absolutely right about people and their vision. And just as I think about that, as you were explaining that, can you tell us what part of the small town living helped you to transition to this part as to dealing with mental health and human behavior?
Oh Jesus. Well, I would say that bigger cities. So if you transition from a small town to a larger demographic, what you notice is that the issues are bigger because the spaces are bigger. There's more room to run around. There's more places to get your toes wet and let your hair down. That you know, um, it's just more to it. There's more spaces to navigate. And coming from being like a small town country bumpkin, I'm gonna call it, and then transition to a city boy. My grandmother used to call it city slicker. That that you learn that there's so much that you don't know. That the smaller towns, you're really kind of cut off from some of the larger issues happening in the world, and the issues that you do have, you don't realize that they're bigger than your town because your existence is that town. So then transitioning from like a Faraday, Louisiana, for example, to a Springfield, Massachusetts, it's like wow, it's like night and day because Springfield, Massachusetts is a huge city, obviously urban city, and it's a metropolitan city. I would say that it exposed me to people from different walks of life, kind of doing that transition. Um, People having different belief systems, people not looking like me, because in a small town, you do see a lot more people that look just like you. I think that was great to be able to transition into a bigger demographic in that way. But again, kind of getting back to the education and the languages and all these things, that it was like, wow, there's just so much more. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to know. And sometimes I feel that when folks make these type of transitions, you can get lost in it. You can forget who you are. You can forget that you have a story too, and that you also matter. And maybe people might be interested in what you have to say. And I think that navigating that for me, for a significant amount of time, um, was quite the journey. I'd say I'm very outspoken now, but there have been times when I've questioned what I've had to say, and I've wondered, if is that going to sound right? Is someone going to think I sound silly? But what I've realized is that me coming from a family that is rooted in empowering others, that my voice does matter because, again, I know what it's like to go through adversity. I know what it's like to struggle. um, I've had sleepless nights. I've had crying days. I've had days when I've needed a hug. So kind of navigating how to kind of merge your identity into larger demographic, making sure that you can connect with other people, but still recognize that you have to continue to show up for yourself each and every day is very, very important. I feel, especially as you travel to different places and talk to people from different walks of life, what connects us all is that we're human. We all bleed red. We all bleed red. We all get hungry. We all certainly use the bathroom. So, what's the difference between me and someone else? Is that our differences live in our stories. It lives in the ways that we choose to again show up for ourselves and for other people. City life, city life is not for the weak. I would say that, especially if you're in New York. New York, bless them. But it definitely gives me high anxiety being in a fast-paced town like that. But I do love traveling to different places and speaking to people in different communities and kind of using my gifts to empower. Everything I do is rooted in empowering others because why else would I do it if it was not to inspire someone else to do just that, empower themselves, and then to empower someone else in their community.
Wow. So, growing up in Western Massachusetts,
Hmm.
what community influences molded your worldview?
Okay, that's a great question. My mother, I would say my mom definitely was strict on me, but for a good reason. I think she knew in her heart, in her mind, in her spirit and soul that my purpose would be bigger and greater than I could even imagine. My mother was always one to push her kids to go for our goals, to go for our dreams. She believed that you only get one life. She still believes that to this day, but that you only get one life and you have to live it to the fullest, and that um, our mistakes don't define who we become, but they certainly play a part in shaping who we become. And from that lens, I feel like I've always kind of surrounded myself with like-minded individuals. So I've had to shout out Western Massachusetts. I We were back and forth from down south in Massachusetts for years. So from Louisiana to Springfield, Mass, and then we lived in Florida for a period of time during Hurricane Katrina. That's another story. That I've always kind of surrounded myself with people who were artistic in nature, or in some way had some type of role where there was helping involved, or there was a message or a story or some way to kind of impact others. So Miss Dr. Paula Moore, I'm gonna shout her out. Dr. Paula Moore, Springfield, Mass, has this. She has this company that she has called the Y Set Academy. That I'm so honored to say that I was a part of from a very very young age. Me and some other like-minded students from the High School of Commerce in Springfield would leave school and go to the White Set Academy. And what they did there, they had music production, they had resume prep, they had other artistic things you can do. They were pretty much preparing us for excellence. That they was teaching us and shaping us that the learning starts young, and you keep to build it up as you go into adulthood. So being having to be a part of that program with Dr. Paula Moore, I think was awesome. We also had another good brother of mine at the time, Mr. AJ Bayman, who was the head of music production there through YSET at that time. So he was definitely instrumental in shaping, my love for music and helping me kind of fine tune my artistic sound, I would say, in singing. He would always say, "Oh man," he goes, "Those harmonies, you got sound like D'Angelo." God rest his soul. But again, so having those experiences through that. Also, when I was not in a like after school program where there was arts and empowerment through that, I was recording music from like 13 to 20, 21. I was recording music with multiple labels, local labels in Springfield at the time. I've had plenty of producers that I worked with. This one producer name was Trix Cardell McManus. Call him out, that I worked with back in the day. He was very instrumental in my musical journey from age 13 to about 20, 21 years old as well. Um, so yeah, those would be like the major ones before college. Before college, I know you and I spoke a little bit about my journey when I went into college. We can talk about that too whenever you're ready. But that was before I ended up going into higher education.
So, what was the moment you realized you were called to help others heal?
Um, I think I realized that I was called to help others heal. I would say maybe around 17, 18, when I decided that I didn't want to go to college. I said no, I'm not gonna go to college. At the time I was watching Romeo Must Die with Jet Li and Aaliyah, and I said, she's working in a CD store. I said, I want to work in a CD store in Atlanta by day, and then I want to record music by night, and I'm gonna get signed. I'm not going to college. I'm not doing that. I said I don't want to do that. So excuse me. I didn't apply for college right away. I had no intent on going at all. I had no interest. I was not interested whatsoever. People were talking about it. I'm like, good luck, you do that. But what resonated with me was that someone had said something very profound, and they said, Alan Michael, you know, I know that you like this music thing and you want to sing and you want to work in a little CD store in Atlanta, but what if something happens? What if you can't work in that CD store in Atlanta? What if you don't have your voice anymore? What do you have to fall back on? And I said, I guess you got a point. I'll see what college has to offer. And I excuse me, I ended up meeting Joan Fuller. She was the director of what's called at the time the Urban Education Program of Westfield State University. That program was dedicated to identifying students from rural areas, students who maybe have lacked resources or not a lot of resources, um, maybe not empowered, feeling disadvantaged, and telling them that we want to empower you. We want to give you a chance to show others that you can exude excellence. I say exude excellence. That program was rooted in. I always felt like a recruit. Like I felt like if you had to look at academics, that John Fuller would be like this secret agent director, and she's recruiting these students, and she's gonna help you become the best student you can be. And because that's the kind of energy that Joan gave. She had a motherly aura to her. You had no choice but to warm up in your soul being around this woman. Um, she looked at you with intent. She would console you with purpose, and every step she took was rooted in a mission to empower someone. Like just kind of being around someone that powerful, you had no choice but to say, you know what, I want that for me, because this woman made you feel like she would look you in your soul and make you feel like she had known you your entire life. And pretty much what parents would say to their children, that I know that you are destined for great things. And once you begin believing that, the rest of the world will also. So going through that program, I think definitely put me through the ringer. I'll say that. It was not easy. It was a academic boot camp for students of color and students from urban areas. 6-week program that you have to complete to matriculate into the major campus there. It was intense. We had a schedule. The deadlines to get to each class were pretty firm. Um, they expected nothing but the best out of us. They expected excellence at every wake of the day. That they were going to challenge us. That they were going to push us to be the greatest versions of ourselves. That has, I would say, that goes down as probably the most rewarding experience in my life, because without that, what we talk about later in this interview wouldn't be possible if I had not gone through such a profound, impactful, and powerful experience rooted in connection, and making us realize that we had more potential than a lot of us actually believed we had. Something that stands out with me through that process is that we had to attend this class called critical thinking. It was a requirement. A requirement to pass the program was that you had to pass critical thinking. Now, this class and philosophy, we had to also take philosophy. So these classes were rooted in challenging the way we saw the world. And if we did see the world a specific way, it was like, well, then what are you going to do about it? You see the world this way. What's your purpose in making it different if you don't like the way that it is right now? What can you do? So kind of having that, kind of being challenged in that way to say that we see that this is something that that gets you upset, that grinds your gears. But what are you going to do to empower yourself to take the next step to say that I'm not going to tolerate that, and I'm going to shift the narrative that someone else told me had to be the narrative at the time, and I actually believed it. So having all these messages kind of come to us, it really strengthened that community that of students up through the urban education program. It's now called the Lead Scholars Program through Westwood State University. There's been a few directors since Joan Fuller. Azanda Seymour, I'd like to call her out, Azanda Seymour, who was the urban ed director after Joan. And then we have LaToya Wilson, who is now the acting director for the Westwood State University Lead Scholars Program. That opportunity, though, to be able to do that, if I could go back and do it again, I would do it 6 times over. I feel that that program really put me in a place to where I became really, really loyal to a cause. I saw the impact it was making on students, and I gave my time to that program every single summer leading up until the time that I graduated from that university.
Wow. So can you tell us, like, innately, with your
Hmm.
superpower being to help people to heal and
Hmm.
to help them with the mental health, can you tell us, again, in connecting the experiences from your small town living to
Yeah.
going on to the city, how has that enhanced you personally as you deal with the people that you come across in your daily living?
Great question. Great question. Well, what I will say is this. Professor C believes that um, coming from such a small town environment, um, really, and then kind of seeing like what urban education did for students from urban areas, that it made me feel more empowered. It made me feel like I was seen, like I was heard, like I mattered, like my story could help others. Not only was I was rooted in connecting with other students, not only that had a story like mine, but from other walks of life as well. But that it helped me to realize that um, our stories don't have to be in competition here. I don't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Woe is me. That it doesn't have to be poor me. I don't want you to feel sorry for me ever. But what I do want you to recognize that I do see the strength in adversity, and but I can also recognize someone else's story too. Even if it's a different story, um, we can still be rooted in similar causes. It's not people who are leaders don't often have the same exact story, um, but they recognize the strength. They recognize what the obstacles were. They recognize what the challenges were and how one would work to overcome them. I feel that kind of coming from a small town and then coming to a bigger city also made me recognize my humanity. It made me recognize again where things were maybe lacking there. But what a wise supervisor once told me is that one can only make their best decision with the information that's in front of them. Even if it's, you can only make your best judgment with the information that you have. Sometimes you don't always have all the pieces to the story. So that's where assumptions come from. People assume things based on little bits of information. But I believe that you have to do the work to dig deeper than that. I don't want you just to make assumptions. I want you to grab a microscope and say, well, what else is going on here? What's being said? But what does that mean underneath that? What does that behavior communicate? I'm seeing one thing, but there's something else that could be going on here as well. I believe that we all have to do our due diligence to we have to do our homework. That we can't allow people to tell us one thing or another without really doing our putting in the time and work and effort, investing and really fully trying to understand something, understand someone. So kind of having the urban education program do just that, I feel was empowering. I felt like we were fighting against, at the time, and still to this day, fighting against stereotypes, fighting against what people believed that we were capable of. I've had supervisors um, that I've worked with in the past that don't look like me, that say someone like me isn't supposed to exist. So if you tell me that I'm a unicorn or that I'm pretty much a flying pig, how am I supposed to take that? How am I supposed to respond to that? That's why I believe coming from these small spaces and then coming to bigger places, you get to kind of talk about these experiences that are rooted sometimes in what I like to call, as you know it, microaggressions. Microaggressions. It's I don't think that it's always I don't think it's always intentional, though. I'll say that. I think that people have their own biases based on what they've been exposed to and what the media tells you to love, be afraid of, to appreciate, to invest time in. I think that all these things are rooted in influence through media, through um, through your background and things that you've kind of gone through that has kind of shaped your worldview. But these spaces, I believe, are designed to challenge your way of thinking, not to discredit you, but to empower you to see things from a different perspective.
Wow. You know, there was so much wrapped up into that, and I appreciate how detailed you are with these questions, because I think that along the way, and just listening to what you just mentioned, I'm sure that there's several people that's out in the audience that actually have gone to several cities, being from a small town, and going to some of these large metropolitan areas, and basically getting like, wow, you know,
Hmm.
and so that experience that caused them to be adjusting, some people don't adjust well, because, it's like sometimes they get overwhelmed, because it's kind of like, where do I fit in?
Hmm.
But it seems like you didn't have that issue, because you had a solid foundation around you. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely, it is absolutely is safe to say. I believe that I'm rooted in spirituality. I do believe in the Most High. I believe that my life has purpose um, beyond just me being here and being human and enjoying my life. That my life is meant to reach others through the stories that I can tell, through the education that I can provide. A foundation is important. They say that stand for nothing or fall for anything. I think that even the greatest of leaders may have struggles at times. You have to be very discerning into the type of people that you have in your space, in your energy, in your circles, for sure. I think that's really, really important, especially as I continue to grow in being an entrepreneur and now being on my own business wise, that I recognize that everybody don't want to see me win. And that's okay. That's okay if you don't, but I'm still going to root for you, even if you don't root for me,
Ooh,
because,
amen.
you know, um,
Amen.
that's okay, and I think that that's what leaders need to recognize, is that everybody isn't going to resonate with what you are trying to provide, and that is all right, because that is not what the goal should be. Even if I reach one person, mission accomplished, because I've made one person on this earth feel some way different than they felt before they came into contact with me. And it's those incremental steps that lead to bigger picture impact and change. That a good leader takes the time to see the bigger picture by building from the ground up and leaving no man behind. That if you see someone struggling, I'm going to say, I got you. But if you see me struggling the next time, I hope you got me too. But if
Mhm.
you don't, I'm going to be okay regardless. Because what you don't do for me, I know that the Most High will.
So let me ask this one last question before I move on, because
Hmm.
you just given us all this life right now. Can you tell me, How did your own life challenges prepare you for the work you do today?
Oh Lord goodness. Yes. I would say, life has not always been easy for me. I think that in my younger years, I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out where I fit in. You know that saying, oh, he has an old soul. Yeah, like the old grannies and aunties. He got an old soul. Y'all hear this. It's like as a kid, you're like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean that I have an old soul? But kind of thinking back to those times, I recognize that I was always a little bit ahead of my time. Just in the way that I thought. I just didn't really relate at the time to some of the kids that were the same age as me. I always gravitated towards older friends in some regard. But I recognize that in Black and Brown communities, um, there is a of stigma of therapy. It rightfully so, rightfully so. So I want to explain. I want to preface this by saying that I recognize why. So coming from a small town, I would say in not all Black communities. I don't want to lump all Black communities or Brown communities in the same under the same scope. What I would say is the way that I was brought up is that typically the way that trauma is dealt with is that we try to find ways to get over it. It's not something that you spend a lot of time talking about. Um, trauma, trauma, it's complex in that way, especially in our communities. But at the time, if you think back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, that not many therapists would look like me. So why would you feel comfortable talking about what's going on in your household? Even in schools, you didn't have a lot of Black teachers like that. You probably had um, that one teacher, but not really feeling like you had a space to kind of talk about trauma or having support with trauma because we really didn't have a lot of names. No one talked about like diagnosis and stuff back then either. No one wanted to meet with a therapist because you met with a therapist. Everyone was going to assume that you have significant mental health, that you were crazy, things like that. I hate saying words like that, but I just got to call it what it is. That's what was said at the time. So I think that these types of topics at the time were very delicate, and I believe that people of color had a hard time navigating how to talk about adversity. And then defining trauma too. That's a whole nother thing. Everyone always assumes that trauma is something that is a horror story. And I get it. Like that significant trauma can be, but there can be other traumatic experiences. The loss of a loved one can be traumatic. Um, Getting to a car accident can be traumatic. Um, I think I think for me that it was hard to kind of navigate those experiences, but knowing that I wanted to navigate those experiences, and knowing that in my family we have had loss that prompted me to go into the mental health field after my Westfield State days. Becoming a therapist was rooted in family loss, having a family member take their life, someone that was close to me. But again, it just makes you wonder how much was he holding on to before that horrible act happened. But this is the type of things I believe that people of color, everyone essentially, but in our communities, we're dealing with. I wrote a research paper in my grad program at Cambridge College on the stigma of therapy in Black and Brown communities. And what I would say about that paper, which makes it impactful, is that I talk about misdiagnosis in Black communities, that culture is not always accounted for when someone of color is being diagnosed. So that if one is spiritual, for example, could be misdiagnosed for schizophrenia or something else because you believe in spirits. So these things have to be taken into account. Someone's cultural identity. Um, I believe that there's a lack of resources that leads to people of color not wanting to be involved in therapy. I believe there's a mistrust. Um, the competency is a challenge. I believe that it's important to have people that are Black and brown in these spaces to really shape how diagnosis is defined moving forward, especially in the current climate of our country being the way that it is. We're living in unknowns, and I think we're getting up every day and just trying to put our best face on. You know, I'm smiling right now, but you know there are uncertainties here that we need to talk about. You know, we can't keep not talking about it because it's only perpetuating what's been happening our entire existence, that we sweep things under a rug and we keep it pushing. But I'm fighting against that. I say no more pushing things under a rug. And we're going to say that these things are still impacting us. And as a matter of fact, they are impacting us more now than they've ever done before. But beyond what we've already done, what are we willing to do next? I believe is what my mission stems toward. What is next for us? How do we continue to empower? How do we continue to find our voices? And how do we continue to make an impact? One for all and all for one.
Wow. Now, with that, I want to transition over to the real meat and potatoes of what you do. Your work as
Mm-hmm.
a licensed mental health professional.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what inspired you to pursue licensure in mental health counseling?
Yeah. I've had some great supervisors over the years. When I left Westfield State, I graduated in May of 2011. I worked at the camp. I worked at Westfield State for about a year as the Eli campus manager, and then I transitioned to the Key program, Inc. I was with Key for 10 and a half, 11 years. The Key program, I got to shout them out too. I got to shout out the Key program. The Key program definitely, like Joan Fuller, like my mother, like my grandmother, saw something in me. I spend a lot of my time just second guessing myself. I think that if if I was a superhero, if Professor C is a superhero, I think that Professor C's kryptonite would be self doubt. That it would be me getting in my way, right? Not necessarily someone else, but that's that doubt, that imposter syndrome that we so talk about very often. That what do I have to offer? Who says that I can be the leader? You know, but remembering the work that those staff members of faculty put into me and other students at Westfield State through the Urban Education Program, I wanted to do the same. So getting into the Key program, which is a nonprofit organization rooted in supporting at-risk youth in the group residential setting. So during that experience, I was able to work with group residents directly. You know, we helped them with their routines. We ran informal groups for them. We tracked them at school. We pretty much gave them a predictable schedule, as predictable as it could be. Recognizing again a mistrust. A lot of these kids are coming in with a mistrust for adults, oftentimes. That there is a mistrust for authority figures. So they're just seeing you as another member. You're just another person here to tell me what to do, pretty much. So having them see something different often is a challenge. But I believe that any therapeutic relationship is rooted in the acronym RICH. RICH stands for respect, information, communication, and hope. That if you can embody all four of these concepts, that you can really empower these students, residents. I worked in schools too, to connect with you, to understand that you're meeting them where they're at. And that's what my purpose for getting licensed was, recognizing that sometimes you got to meet people where they're at, not to talk at them, but to talk to them, to recognize that sometimes therapy is not going to be on a couch with a notepad. Sometimes therapy is going to be me talking to you while you're dribbling a basketball. Or maybe therapy is going to be you sitting in the back seat and I'm picking you up from school. Recognizing that each moment any moment in the day really can present for a therapeutic moment, because if you are really attuned to supporting these residents, these students, these kids, that you can really make any moment a teachable moment. But it starts with them recognizing that you are also human and you know what it's like to struggle. You know what it's like not to have. And what I realized going through the Key program, I became a by 6 months at the Key program, I was a shift supervisor. I then became an assistant program supervisor. By the age of 24, I was a program supervisor running my own group home with a group of teenage girls. I was 24 years old running this program at the time. And again, the Key program gave me many opportunities to lead being there. They saw something in me and it made me believe in myself. And I said, beyond just being like a group home director here, I want to do more than that. I want to really focus in on the mental health. I want to meet people sometimes, maybe before they get to these spaces, to see if there are preventative measures that we can take so that they're not ending up in a group home setting. I want to help to reunify children with their parents, which I spent a great deal of my time doing through the Key program, really working hard to get these kids back home to their moms and their dads. I believe that becoming a licensed therapist also supported me being able to educate other staff members on differences in culture, and having like having a Caucasian staff member, maybe teaching them how to support African American female, how she would like her hair done, things like that, things that were lacking, right? Having really good supervisors, though. I got to shout out Michael Murray, who was my supervisor from the Key program. He is now the chief operating officer of the Key program incorporated. That good sir right there. I gotta give him his due diligence and his credit. I salute you, Mike. I honor you for believing in me and putting me in these spaces. Mike was really instrumental in pushing me. He said, Alan, Michael, you've done a lot of great things for this agency. He goes, but if you want to continue to grow, you need to go back to school. I said, all right, Mike. So, kind of having those conversations and having people pushing me in that way. Other good leaders from the Key program, Dr. Jeffrey Gold, Lynn Nelson, Michael Guthrie, people like that.
So, can you tell us how you approach therapy differently from traditional models?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. How do you approach therapy differently from traditional models?
I did not hear that question. I guess it's static or something on this.
Okay.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yes, I can.
Okay. How do you approach therapy differently from traditional models?
Okay, yes. So, what I would say is that I believe what I do in my practice is rooted in not only mental health, but it's also rooted in art. So, expressive art therapy, I would say, I definitely encompass cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, expressive art therapy, solution focused therapy, let's say motivational interviewing, even all of these things combined, right? Those things combined, considering that adversity continues to be a concern in our communities, and my love for music, singing, dance, art, that all those things come together to make up what my practices are. Every single one of them, everything that I do in my practices are rooted in combining these elements. With that being said, I don't, and I don't suggest that my clients do one thing or the other. I'm rooted in meeting them where they're at, with them having an understanding of the work that I do, and we come together to form that therapeutic alliance and figure out what their treatment plan is going to look like. I am a therapist who is rooted in honoring clients' individuality. I honor individuality. I support personal growth and gains, and I believe that a treatment plan should sound like it's representing the client's voice their authenticity and totality. Yeah, we have to use some formalities with the type of treatment modalities, but we make sure that we encompass the client's voice into the treatment planning and into the session when I'm actually taking the time to meet with them one on one.
Wow. So, so as you've been taking on your clients and you've now gone out into private practice, can you tell us what are some of the things that you've noticed from, your clients that come from the black and brown communities, and how, I'm sure that there's like this thing where, they're just not sure about this therapy thing and how this is going to work. What are some of the things that you've learned from those clients that you've been able to ease them more into the programs of treatment?
Absolutely. I spend a great deal of time preparing my clients before I even meet them. I feel like my process is very intricate in terms of me really working to establish some form of communication and relationship prior to the first session. So I do offer, obviously, I do at least, I offer times where I'm willing to kind of meet with the client before we actually do a comprehensive intake to kind of hear their voice of what they believe is going on, and giving them a chance to understand who I am beyond what a profile might say about me or a resume. That I want them to see the person that I am beyond that, because I'm more than just, obviously I'm more than just a therapist. I'm a human. I'm also a man, a black man. I have other identities that all come together to make me who I am in totality. So just like I'm able to recognize that, I think it's important that my clients know that I recognize that in them as well, and that I would never ever put them in a box or assume one thing. I assume nothing about my clients ever. I never assume anything. I always ask questions to get an understanding of who they are. And what I hear from my clients is that they appreciate that. They appreciate that I don't come in. I call it assuming identity. I don't assume identity. That's not what I'm about. So I believe kind of having someone, really meeting them at a human level before a therapist client level is really, really important for establishing a good foundation for a therapeutic relationship. I'm meeting you as a human first, but then beyond that, then we can talk about what a therapist and a client looks like.
So, what are the 7 areas of wellness, and how do you integrate them into your work?
Okay, I always gotta write them down when I say them, so I'm gonna write them I'm gonna write them as I mention them and kind of give you my explanation of all of them. Oh, okay. All right. So the 7 areas of wellness that I like to look at. There's like different wheels. I think if one was to go and type in 7 areas of wellness or 7 domains of wellness on like a Google, for example, or Yahoo, you'll see that the 7 areas of wellness are different pillars in your life functioning. That is believed by me and anyone who teaches or educates about the 7 areas of wellness, that if you have a foundation in each of these areas, that you can reach satisfactory in life, that you are doing your due diligence to get to a point of ongoing happiness. So, spiritual, spiritual functioning being one is very, very important. Um, I do ask about spirituality. I don't assume that one is religious, though, ever. I simply ask if my clients are spiritual, and then have them describe what spirituality or religion means to them. In any question I ask my clients, it's usually rooted in that way. What does it mean for you? Environmental would be another area. So what I like to tell my clients is that with environmental, it's all about in what ways are you supporting environments that you belong to. It's beyond just having a neat home environment, for example, being an environment. How are you showing up for the communities that you belong to? Um, what are you doing to give back? Are you volunteering at pantries? Are you what else would be something? Are you helping out with no littering? Like, are you picking up things that you see on the ground, for example? How are you caring about your environment and environments that you belong to? How are you supporting or empowering others to do just that? Social functioning is another area that becomes important to talk about for clients. That is rooted in your relationships. I would say it's your relationship with yourself, but also your relationship with others, because you have to continue to work on yourself to be able to maintain self-respect, to manage conflict appropriately, to navigate the complexities of when to walk away from toxic people and toxic relationships. That's really rooted in your social functioning, but you really have to have a good relationship with yourself. So I really teach my clients how to get back to themselves. That I really, really want you to fall in love with yourself, because I also believe that you teach others how to treat you by how you treat you. That if you're treating yourself with respect, that you're walking in your purpose, that you are going day by day proud and standing in your truth and what you can offer this world, that other people will have no choice but to follow suit. They will have no choice but to follow suit. Intellectual functioning is important as well. So again, that's the ability to kind of learn new topics, new concepts in the academic settings, how you apply some of those critical thinking skills to real life situations. For example, physical functioning, what kind of speaks for itself. Are you taking care of your body? Are you practicing wellness? Are you have clean eating? They call it. Are you eating healthy foods? Are you cutting out some of the junk food, for example? In what ways are you taking care of your body? Are you active? Are you exercising? Emotional functioning. So this one's really, really big, obviously, in a therapy practice, that we want to know where our clients are and how they're thriving in their emotional functioning, or where there might be deficits. There might be some challenges. And then finally, occupational functioning. So your ability to sustain, like I would say, productivity in work settings. If you are engaged in any kind of trades, if you are trying to obtain any types of licenses, things like that. Things that add to your professional growth and value, so to speak. So I believe that real happiness is rooted in making progress in all 7 of those areas. I typically would rate my clients on a scale of 1 to 10 in how they see their functioning. So I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you thriving? Or you feel like you've made the most progress you can make in this area? Or 1, you think that you haven't made any progress at all, or this is an area that you hope to continue to explore further. I always utilize the sandwich effect with my clients. The sandwich effect is rooted in starting with a positive, which is that first slice of bread, and then ending with a positive, that bottom piece of bread. The meat in the middle is what I believe we choose to work on for the benefit of gain. So any rating scale that I use for the 7 areas of wellness is rooted in helping my clients recognize that it's not that this is like a negative, so to speak. This is an area that might be more challenging for you. I believe language matters. And what you speak with your tongue becomes reality. So we really have to be careful with how the words we use, the language we speak, the sentences that we use, that we need to take the time and really reframe language as much as possible, so that we can look at things from a different perspective.
So let me, of those 7, let's go back to number 4, because number 4 stands out as something that's like, is so relevant that it's like a catch-all, where pretty much everything you do in life is based on that. Can you tell us, how do you emphasize that in your treatments with your clients, or part of your therapeutic sessions, and how are they accepting to that?
Okay. One of my catchphrases is "Welcome to the mental movement," because what's movement if you're not using your mind? Professor Z says. So with that, I'd say that it's believed, right? If we go back to the whole principle of CBT, even cognitive behavioral therapy, that any behavior uh, starts as a thought. That it starts here. It starts in your head, and then from there, it becomes a feeling or an emotion. That thought made me feel this way, and then that feeling then transitions into a behavior. You have a thought, you have a feeling, you have a behavior. That is the cycle of how these things they come up together. So that if we are able to, I say, is there power in shifting perspective? Because if we're able to take full control, or as good as we can, control of the mind, then the possibilities of success are endless. Because who's defining success? That's what's missing, is that oftentimes the thoughts we have is because we are thinking about how someone else might define success. But if we reframe that and say, wait, rewind, how do I define success in this moment? I'll give you an example. Let's talk about the gym. We know that nobody really wants to work out like that. I'm sorry. There might be people who are like diehard workout fans, but I'm gonna tell you that I'm not one of them. But I will get up on a treadmill all day. I'll get on a treadmill. I'll shake a little something. I'll go a little but I'm not like, yay, workout time. No, I'm not doing that. But I do recognize the benefit of working out. So if a client came to me and said, I'm really depressed. I feel like I'm not taking care of my body. I'm not going to the gym. I have this membership and I've been paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars. This is hypothetical. Clients never said this to me. Hypothetically speaking, hundreds of dollars on this membership. I would say, well, what's the first step to getting to the gym? What do you mean? It's getting in my car and going. No. Before you get in your car, what's the first step? Getting my gym clothes together. Is that a step forward?
Yes.
Well, I didn't actually think about it that way. So so you got your clothes together today. That was a step forward, a bigger step than you did the day before. It was just getting the clothes together that you wanted to wear to go to the gym. And what can you do the day after that? Well, maybe I can put the clothes in my car. Is that a step forward? Yeah. And what can you do the day after that? Maybe I'll drive to the parking lot. Absolutely. So you tell me, if you're taking a step forward every single day leading up to the point to getting on that treadmill finally, who is responsible for deciding your success? Is it the person that has the supermodel body that probably didn't, I ain't gonna get into that. But is it that person in the magazine? Or is it you knowing those incremental steps you took every single day leading up to the point to where you actually got on the treadmill to go to the gym? And that's so reshaping the intellect to think in those terms, that no one decides what your success is to look like but you. And when you decide that it has to be decided by someone else's standard, you already put yourself in a box.
Now that in itself, let me just, because now I'm not a therapist, but can you tell, because that sounds like, when they say the thing about when you're being too hard on yourself, and you're like tearing yourself down too much or whatever have you, which means you're actually you're leading to and creating your own demise.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so in doing that, is that something that you have to work with your client to maybe change his or her thinking, as to how they're seeing things, where you get them to like verbalize, okay, this is what you're saying. So if you're saying this, do you think this, or this? Is that how that works?
Sometimes, and a lot of times, these thoughts are rooted in anxiety. They're
Okay.
thinking. I call them thinking traps. I know that another term you can call it is distorted thinking. A thinking trap is an expectation that no one gave you that creates anxiety. It's an expectation because somewhere in your subconscious you believe that it had to be. Somewhere along the line, your brain comes to this conclusion that
that's an expectation. If I don't do it this way, then it's failure. So there's different types of thinking traps that I'm helping clients work through each and every day. We have filtering, we have catastrophic thinking, we have black and white or all or nothing thinking. We have fortune telling, telling the future, what they think something's going to be before it actually happens. So, and I do it too, and I think that's the beauty in it, is that my clients recognize that even as a therapist, my humanity, what makes this a powerful journey for the both of us, is that I'm human too. So I too have to combat some of these thinking traps that come up. So the empowerment is sometimes rooted in slowing down the mind, because our minds are powerful tools and they can move 1,000,000 miles an hour if you let it, right? So let's slow it down. I'm gonna sound like that guy from the Visine commercial with the monotone voice. Let's slow it down here, so that they understand that, I really want us to, I want us to think about this. I want us to think about this. How much do we actually have to accomplish today? What can we put off for tomorrow? And what do we no longer need to worry about because yesterday has already happened? So yes, if yesterday's happened and tomorrow hasn't happened yet, all we're faced with is what we have to do today. So let that be the guide to getting you to where you want to go. Let's live in the here and now. Let's say that I'm not going to focus on those other two categories. I'm going to focus on what I can do right in this moment. I tell my clients, even if it's a 5-minute change of something, that's growth. I don't care. I think that's growth. I'm going to celebrate every step it takes to get you to that next level, because that's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the small steps you're taking. I want you to highlight your positives each and every day, even if on your worst day. What's the takeaway from that worst day or that bad day that's going to help you go into the next day better than you were the day before?
So, what do you believe people misunderstand most about mental health?
That it is a linear path. I think that with most things that our media, has a strong pull, especially now with all these social media platforms. I think that our media has a strong pull and influences the way that we see certain things. Being, again, someone who came up through the urban education program, critical thinking means that you don't flow across the land like a sheep. You're going to be a wolf, and you're going to challenge the majority. You're going to challenge thought processing. Who decided that this needed to be that way? That's the way that I kind of look at these things. And I believe that people come into therapy assuming that it's one way, and learn that it's actually pretty empowering, because I put my clients, I set up the stage. Therapy is about setting the stage. And I like to say that I set my stage for empowerment. If the therapy platform is a stage, then mine is rooted in empowerment. So my client is going to leave that session, if not with a new skill, knowing that I was doing my best to empower them every step of the way. So recognizing that, it's not going to be the traditional lens of therapy. I kind of made the joke there earlier about the whole couch, the person on the couch like this, and then the therapist with the notepad, and they're like, tell me more. That's some of it, but that's not all of it. I think right. That's certainly not what I do. I'm going to be your therapist. I'm going to be your motivational coach. I'm going to be whatever I need to be to empower you to get the skill base you need to live a more rewarding and fruitful, empowered life. So if that therapist becomes a coach at 20 minutes in, then that's just what it's going to be. But my clients, what they recognize, again, is that I recognize that there is power in the pivot, that when you follow a linear path, you don't always account for the obstacles that can come your way. But that's like trauma. One of the doctors from my grad program said that when people go through obstacles, this linear path begins to spike. What you thought was going to be a straight line, it spikes. And that's like life. That's like therapy. it's not going to be one way. We might be working on one skill one day, and then the very next session, we're working on a completely different skill because that's what you needed at the time. Yes, I'm going to have a toolbox of things to support you with, but I'm going to utilize those things in the toolbox based on what you might need in that moment, not what a curriculum or what a therapy book, in a linear way at least, would tell me I need to do. I'm not going to be working with a client about, let's see, give me an example. I'm not going to be working with a client on, this is I'm kind of put myself in a pickle here. I'm not going to be working with a client on, let's say, something related to coming up with problem solving surrounding anxiety associated with family gatherings if they have a poor sense of self in that session. The priority is recognizing that in this particular session, this client is seeing themselves as less than. They're not recognizing their worth, their value. They're criticizing themselves. If I can't work with them on figuring that out, how can I expect that they're going to be in a place to where they can really tackle that other issue? I do recognize that as therapists, we do have to distract our clients, but I say that distractions are never a solution to something that will take long-term work and time to remedy. That sometimes these issues are complex. So meeting our clients where they're at least in my context, is that I recognize that as a therapist, I have to pivot from time to time. I'm going to jump around to meet that client.
So, how do you create safe spaces for clients who have never experienced emotional safety?
Yeah, by making them feel heard. I think validation goes a long way, and I believe honestly that you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't know how to connect from a human level, that does not matter. I don't care if your vocabulary, you have the biggest vocabulary in the world, that you really have to root your practice and your work and connection. That is going to take you further than anything else, that connection with that person. So validating, active listening and paraphrase is super important because the client knows that you're hearing what they have to say. And sometimes we don't know, right? We might say something and the client might say, that's not what I meant. Well, I'm glad I paraphrased in that way because now I know that that's not what you meant. But you have to listen. You have to listen to understand, not listen to fix. Because what we do is not about fixing, it's about guiding. Never a fix, only a guide. And that's what I strive for. That I'm going to guide you to that water, but if you want to drink it, do you. That's on you. That's on you to decide. But just know that I'm going to do my part in helping you see the path to get you to where you hope to go.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about the mental movement, LLC.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we got so much here that I know we're definitely going to have you back.
Okay.
So can you tell us what sparked the creation of the mental movement?
Oh my goodness. Mental movement. Okay. So, again, rooted in humanity. When I started my first practice, Miracles Happen Therapy through Sondermind, my practice was not popping. I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm like, my practice ain't popping. My mother, being the mother that she is, she goes by Gigi, but Miss Angela Jameson and my stepfather Tony Jameson there, being my biggest cheerleaders right now, just really stated, Alan Michael, it's not popping right now, but it's gonna pop as long as you want it to pop. And I'm like, you know what? That's right. It might not be popping right now, but it can be popping later. But I have to put in, first off, it starts with a belief. It starts that I say, as Professor C, when you believe, they believe. So if I don't believe that I can do it, why would it pop off? Why would anyone want to come to me? Why would anyone feel empowered? If my whole mission is rooted in empowerment and art and avocation and All for one and one for all. What am I doing? What am I giving or providing that suggests that I'm actually living in that authentic truth? So I went back to my roots and I began to brainstorm what makes me me. And it brought me back to my childhood and knowing that everything that I've ever done has been rooted in emotional expression. Everything I've ever written, every dance move I've ever done, any poem I've ever had, any song I've ever recorded, any stage I've ever performed on, that everything has always been rooted in emotional and expression. And what does emotional expression do? It connects you to other people who want to emotionally express themselves. So the mental movement is about encompassing all of that. Every facet of my whole being. It's Alan Michael as the singer. It's Alan Michael as the journalist. It's Alan Michael as the step team director. It's Alan Michael as the program supervisor. Alan Michael as the therapist. Alan Michael as the son. Alan Michael as the black man. Alan Michael as the one who's gone through something. It's all of my experience wrapped up in one. Like I like to call it, a pretty little celebratory bow to show you that there is power in taking those moments that were meant to break you and use them to empower you. What people thought was going to keep you stuck, I said, no, you know what? You wanted me to have that? Give it to me. Give it to me. Let me show you what I do with it. And then make it into something that I can call my own. So the Mental Movement LLC is rooted just in that purpose of taking everything that I've always thought about myself, every positive thing, every doubt, every concern, every positive thing anyone else has said about me, every doubt, every concern that they've had. And I wrapped it together and I said, and here you go. This is empowerment because I'm not hiding from my adversity. I'm not hiding from the fact that I've been through things. I'm saying that I become stronger because of it. And now I'm going to take what I've learned and I'm going to empower others to do just the same thing as that.
Wow. That is like that's dropping the mic right there. Because that right there, that's the learned moment. That's the learned experience where you say, I'm here. So it's like you're doing what you're doing and you had your mind set, in other words. So it's just time to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
How does expressive art enhance therapeutic outcomes?
Yes. I think that it has been very impactful in my practices with my clients. I would say just naturally, every person on this earth is artistic in some way. If you are a good cook, you are artistic. If you know how to flip a burger on a grill, I'm calling it artistic because I like the way you flipped it. I'm going to take these basic things that that people have never been praised for and tell them that you can see these things as strengths if you choose to. So my clients are coming to me with poetry that they have written. Some of them are singing. Some of them are doing art. They're seeing my art because now that I'm on my own, I don't hide my artistic expression. In the past, it was like, who you were. Alan Michael, the artist, had to be Alan Michael, had to be separate from Alan Michael, the therapist. I said in 2026, Alan Michael, the artist, is Alan Michael, the therapist. So it's not a either or. It's a this and that, and that's okay because that's my power. That's my truth. That's how I walk. And anyone who has a problem with that, that's really none of my concern because it's not my business how someone feels about me. Just know that I'm going to continue to walk in my authentic truth every single day. And I'm going to continue to empower, and I'm going to continue to empower others to empower themselves through their art. Advocacy itself is an art. As you can see, I'm very passionate about these things that I'm talking about. This is advocacy. It's taking pride in what you believe in unapologetically and saying that this is what I believe is rooted in my empowerment. Take it or leave it. This is what you get. But know that I'm doing something that gives me a reason to sleep good at night and gives me a reason to smile in the morning.
What makes the mental movement different from traditional therapy spaces?
Well, I decided to take something that was more traditional in nature and make it something evolved. Um, I would say that it. I would say that my approach is very humanistic. Again, that I recognize that parents. Let's put it in the context of parents. Parents are going to be your coach, your mom, your dad, your cook, your teacher. They're going to be your cheerleader. Parents are going to wear multiple hats. Teachers are going to wear multiple hats. As a therapist, I'm going to wear multiple hats because I have training in so many disciplines that I have no, I just, that's just who I am. These experiences have shaped me to be this therapist that I am. So the mental movement, that's why out of all of the things that I'm doing, the Medical Staffing Therapy through Sound the Wellness Collective through Headway, and the Mental Movement LLC being my baby, that it is authentically me. That the Mental Movement LLC is my love letter to myself. It was my way of picking myself back up when I thought that when I was in a tough spot in my life and just kind of feeling like I had nothing else to give. That's what the mental movement means for me. It's the love letter to myself. Um, and I hope that it allows my clients and anyone who comes into contact with me to create their love letter for themselves.
So, can you tell us what demographics or communities does this platform reach the most effectively?
Okay. Um, so I work with clients from multiple ranges, multiple demographics. I definitely have I have a significant clientele of clients that are from Black and Brown communities, but I also work with children. I work for people from larger areas. I have clients that aren't from Black and Brown communities as well. That's what makes my practice welcoming. That I have the ability to work with people from all walks of life, that I celebrate all walks of life, that I honor everyone's individuality. Um, you can be black, white, you can be however you identify. I'm going to respect that. I'm going to honor you, and I'm going to meet you where you're at. But yes, that would be my specific clientele. I would say if you want to go age range, right now I'm ranging from ages 12 to maybe like 50s.
Okay.
So a wide range,
That
but
is.
it depends on what the clients are looking for. Because I'm not only an individual therapist, I'm a family therapist, I'm also a couples therapist, and I'm a school adjustment counselor.
Wow. So let's delve a little bit deeper uh, into your work at the Key Program and the At Risk Youth.
Yes.
So how did you become involved with the Key Program?
Okay, yeah. So I heard about the Key program through some other co-workers of mine at the time that they went to the urban education program as well, like me, and started working at the Key program. So they told me about the Key program, and I've heard about the Key program through people from my community at the time that either knew someone who went through the Key program, had a mentor or a coach at a school that went through the Key program. I think that in the Springfield area, what you'll notice is that many of the teachers, counselors, lawyers, judges, directors, not most, I'm gonna say some, I'm not gonna say most, many people that I know, some people get their start at the Key program. The Key program incorporated is usually like that agency to where you're going in entry level. And the Key program is producing leaders. I will tell you that. The Key program is producing leaders. So it made sense for my colleagues, the students that I knew, to recommend something like that for me. They thought that the Key program would be a fit for me. I also had a friend at the time that was working for another agency in Springfield called the Center for Human Development. There are multiple agencies in Massachusetts, But she had been working with her agency as well, and I knew that she was working with at-risk youth. Me going through the urban education program and also being a peer counselor at the urban education program, it made sense that transitioning from Westfield State to Key program would be my next step in my development.
Okay. So, what are the unique needs of at-risk youth today?
Mm-hmm. So obviously, there's still a mistrust. I would say with the at-risk youth, identity is huge. Identity is huge. I think that as a caregiver, a therapist, a teacher, people in these roles have a responsibility to pay attention to identity, not the identity that you believe you see, but the identity that the client identifies with. I think identity is huge right now, big. So I believe that training up and coming therapists, program supervisors, clinical supervisors, and being able to work within that scope of recognizing identity is really, really important for relationship building. But again, if you're having these kids coming in and they have a mistrust for adults, that if you're not attending to their identity, you've already failed at the game here. That you really have to do your due diligence to meet the client. I keep saying that. Meet the client where they're at. Meet the client where they're at. Meet the client where they're at. So identity, mistrust of adults. I believe that exploitation is big, especially with teenage age students, the ones that are prone to run away. Exploitation is huge. So kind of being aware of the signs that can lead to an at-risk youth running from a facility or from a school and then getting exploited in some way is really, really important for people in our field to recognize those signs and teach the at-risk youth to recognize the signs of people who they should and should not be talking to. It's really, really, really important. Also, as a full adjustment counselor, we kind of move toward teaching social emotional learning in the classroom. So there's a component to where the teacher is dedicated to some lesson planning. It's a short period, but some lesson planning dedicated to social emotional learning at school. What we are seeing now in this country is that if the social emotional is not thriving, the academics will also fail. That they go hand in hand. So mental health is at an all-time high right now in this country. Um, Therapists are needed. Therapists are needed. Therapists are needed. Beyond a therapy room, classrooms. I don't know. Maybe in like a sports setting that we're needed. We're needed because the social emotional is so severe in some cases now that it's creating deficits in other areas. I know you mentioned earlier that you feel like the intellectual functioning would be the one to kind of focus on. And I understand that too. I think that's really, really important what you said there. But what we're noticing, especially with young kids, is that sometimes they're not able to verbalize where the feelings are coming from. Sometimes the feeling itself comes on first, and might lead to, it kind of works in reverse in some regard. That
Okay.
and that's rooted in trauma, right?
Right.
That a past traumatic experience can create a feeling or an emotion in a youth, and that can then create the thoughts that came from the feeling in reverse. So not working the way that we have been trained to kind of teach, but that's what we're seeing. So that if you get the social emotional aspect here to a healthy balance, that the intellectual functioning is going to thrive. It's not that it's completely severe. It's that it's not reaching its fullest potential because of the social emotional aspect not being where it needs to be for that student to feel comfortable, or that at-risk youth to feel comfortable with thriving in the way that we want to see them thrive.
So, how do you build rapport with young people who have experienced instability?
Yeah. Again, I listen to them. I think that their story is important. I believe that it's important to really get to know a at-risk youth beyond what you're reading on paper. Working in a facility, we are often provided a kind of like a referral packet, right? A referral packet, so to speak. The referral packet talks about the reason for why the student or at-risk youth came into care. Um, in some regard, it might be parental, it could be trauma, whatever. There's something on paper telling you why this client needs services. Um, so we know that. We know that that is what we're given because we need to know why we're in place, why this client is coming to us for us to kind of help them with some skill building, some healing, some growth here. But that one page, that 2 page, that 3 pages, that's not the full story. And that's what I really, really try to teach. I've always tried to teach people who come up under me that I don't want you to, I want you to read the background information, but I don't want you to let that background information influence you to make a opinion about this kid, this at-risk youth, this student before they've even walked in the door. That happens all the time. I feel in direct cares that, or any type of care services that you're provided some background information and then it's not said out loud, but it's like, oh boy, this one's gonna be a handful. How do you know that, right? You don't know that just yet. So kind of challenging that narrative that we need to take our time to actually figure out not what's working wrong, but how can we empower motivate these kids when they're walking in the door. So yes, we need to know what the risks are, but we also need to know what motivates them. I want to know what makes them smile. If I know that, for example, if I know that this kiddo has had abandonment concerns because parents never showed up for a visit, but they really thrived on Legos, then before I meet them, I'm going to go out and get some Legos. And the Legos is going to be something that they see when they walk in the door. That is attention to detail. And I take pride in that I take the time to look at the very small things that can make this moment impactful for these kids. And we need more of that for all of us caregivers to say beyond what the risks are, what steps can we take to motivate from the start, to bridge the gap and make connection from the start. And that doesn't always happen.
What systemic barriers do these youth face?
Systemic barriers. Well, I believe that forming an opinion on a kid before you meet them is a systemic barrier because it doesn't only happen to one kid; it happens to multiple kids, right? So that's a systemic barrier that's created, not intentionally, but we know that staff members get curious. They want to know who's coming through the door, who's coming through the door. What I will say about the Key program, though, is that Key program always made sure that we met the clients before they even had an intake. We got to meet them first. We got to talk to them. We got to know what their interests were, their hobbies. We got to know what their favorite foods were. We had a good idea of who this kiddo was before they even entered our programs. We took pride in that. And going back to our staff and saying, I know that this is what you have on the referral. This is what's on the referral packet, but we've actually met the kiddo, and this is what we've learned about them. So kind of, I would say evening opinion a little bit, right? That if people kind of have that one opinion based on what they read, you can say, well, have this opinion based on what I told you I saw and what I heard with my own ears, kind of being like the different thing there. Culture, I think, is another systemic barrier to connection and care, because there's just a lack of knowing. I think that even with knowing, because let's talk about the complexity of cultural competence for a second, is that you have to be really careful when it comes to recognizing and understanding culture, that just because you and I look the same doesn't mean that we come from the same experience. And I believe that is a systemic issue, that, oh, well, he's Black, you're Black, you both experience this. Not to say that we don't have similar, who knows? We might have similar experiences, but to kind of assume that based on what we look like, that our experience is the same. I think I just don't feel like that's honorable. I think that it's more honorable to ask me what my experience was and how it connects or disconnects from what your experience might be. So kind of having that um, worthy of life, sense of belonging, making kids feel like they're worthy, appreciating their distinct differences. I mentioned earlier about having like the African American girl in a program and having all white staff. Who's going to teach them how to do her hair? How are they learning how to do this young girl's hair? I've run into issues like this where I'm having to be the one to step up and say, well, this is how you do. You're creating training plans on how to teach staff how to do this girl's hair who's black. That's the reality though, right? Is that's what happens a lot of times, that these kids are put into programs with people who don't fully understand the scope of how to fully care for them.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that where a lot of systems fail because of what you just mentioned with that. For one, there's a catch-all, but for everything else, it has to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, I mean, what are some suggestions that you may have had that you could come up with, when it comes to stuff like that? Because when it comes to like the little black girls and doing the hair and so forth, that's the number one issue that I know that's been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that people that don't look like us don't have to learn to do our hair, but we have to learn to do their hair.
Right. And that's the case, right? And I think so. My supervisor, I've had supervisors from all demographics, colors. I'm really a person who's connected. When I say that my purpose is rooted in connection, I'm rooting for everyone. But we need to recognize these issues that are going on. That staff need to be invested and not just showing up to supervise a kid or lesson planning. Beyond that, treatment has to be about really supporting their whole being. So if we go back to identity being the overall word I'm going to use for this, identity and connection, that you're right, that maybe you don't necessarily have to learn, but if you're working with someone from a different demographic, why wouldn't you want to know more about it? Why wouldn't you want to learn, right? Because it doesn't make sense to me that if you decide that you want to be a caregiver, a therapist, a teacher, working with kids who are black, brown, yellow, you name it, that you are going to want to learn how they do these things. Because how can you truly, fully understand their experience and support them? This happens all the time, not just with situations like hair, but the way that the way that certain questions on tests are written. Having a kid to have to answer a test question about a vacation that their parent could never afford. Of course, he's not going to answer the question correctly because his parent never went on a vacation to Peru. He doesn't know what that's about. He doesn't know what it costs to go to a vacation to Peru. He's stuck on the word Peru because he's never heard it before. He saw it on this test that healing, connection, growth is really rooted in recognizing that people have a different lens of world view, and that you shouldn't feel bad if you come from a different perspective of worldview, but you should do your part and invest in trying to understand that person's perspective, understand their walk of life, understand what makes them happy, understand what makes them sad. Because if you're not doing that, then what are you really doing?
But Professor C, I'm sorry, but I have to do one more follow-up question on that because, I mean, again, you just hit something else that stuck in my mind. And that is when we talk about those standardized tests, right? Mm-hmm. Those standardized tests, we know that they're all biased because they ask these questions that a large segment of these kids that are taking those tests of course, I mean, they're answering a question, basically trying to do it off some logic, but they don't know what the hell they're asking.
Absolutely.
And so, which, it contributes to this, I call it fictional, when it says that, how the test, how kids that are black and brown, or black and brown people in general, that's male and female, can't pass a standardized test because he or she has a learning or a what they call it. They have a comprehension issue.
It's true. Oh,
they
yes.
can't comprehend, and that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, and still, it continues though to this day. How does that play on the psyche of these kids, especially the at-risk youth?
Yeah. So this here too. I'm passionate about all these topics. So thank you for these questions. I'm going to answer it very honestly. I believe that some of these tests and things that I believe that it does a disservice to our children in some regard, that it doesn't account for their experiences. So if it's not accounting for their experiences, it's also not empowering that there are moments in their experiences that they are proud of. I guess my barbecue in the backyard with my family isn't good enough because we couldn't afford to go to Peru. So a family gathering is only good enough if it means that my family could afford to go to Peru. But because we had to settle for a backyard cookout with hot dogs and burgers, that's not good enough. So what it does is, it, in some regard, it systemically destroys a young child's psyche in some regard. And this is what I'm saying, that I take pride in attention to detail. It's what made me a really great program supervisor, that I saw the things that other people did not see, that people didn't even care to see, because the system was flowing. Things are operating. Why fix it if it's not broken? It's not broken because you decided that there was nothing, that the screw couldn't be tighter. I'm telling you that we can give me the screwdriver. Give me the screwdriver. I'm gonna tighten the screw a little tighter because I'm letting you know that I can see from my eyes that it can be tighter. And I believe that this impacts us in education. I believe that it impacts us in the workplace. I believe it impacts us anywhere where there's human connection. These are the types of issues that we are faced with having to overcome. And a lot of times, some people, you name it, don't feel empowered enough to make it an issue. It's like, well, we're all thinking it, but no one wants to say it. And that happens a lot. We're all thinking it, but no one wants to say it. Professor C is going to say it because I'm telling you that this is what's going on. But again, what are we going to do about it? One part is acknowledging that this actually is an issue, despite what members suggest. Because just because members say, oh, this school is thriving in that way, or this group home is thriving in that way, what are we not accounting for? What are we missing here? What's going to get us over the success that we believe that we have? Because I never believe that anything's ever fully a 10 or perfect. I hate that. I hate a 10 and I hate perfect. I don't use it. I don't preach it. I don't encourage it. Because to me, that means that there's no room left to grow.
Exactly.
And I just don't believe that. So I think the moment that you believe that we've done all that we can do to empower, then we're right back to ground zero, because you've decided that there's nothing else that can be learned, that growth even is not eternal. And it is, if you want it to be. And for me, in the work that I do, I want it to be. Every single day, I'm striving to empower. I'm striving to help my clients continue to reach their best selves each time, each day that they want to, knowing that I got their back. But we're never going to say that it's the end of the story. We're never going to say that, right? Because I believe that happiness isn't rooted in the end result. It's rooted in the pursuit of getting there.
So we discussed Black history, and I asked you, in your life and career, who were the most influential persons in your life and career? You mentioned to me Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us why are Dr. King and Malcolm X the most influential figures in your life and career?
Yeah. Let me say this. I believe that I believe that microaggressions exist, and sometimes that it's that type of racism and prejudice that speaks louder than what's you can actually see to your face, because it's systemic. It's little jabs. I'm going to keep jabbing at you so that you can question your self-worth. I'm going to keep throwing little things, little digs in there to challenge the way you see yourself. Sociology 101 says that if you tell someone something long enough, they eventually begin to believe it, because that's the only framework of what they've had to believe, because they're not allowing any other messages to enter their head. They're just going with the same message. So if someone says, you're unworthy, you're unworthy, you're unworthy, you're unworthy, you're unworthy, over and over and over again, you begin to believe that. It's not just in saying it, but it's in how you're treated. And I believe that, especially in higher education, that I believe that systemic racism, prejudice, and all these other things, they're more sophisticated. I'm not gonna be in your face with it. I'm gonna be a doll. You know, I'm gonna make you feel like you're less than, but I'm gonna be cute about it. I might shake your hand even. So kind of recognizing that, recognizing those digs and being able to call it for what it is. I believe in Black and brown communities that it's always said that Black and brown people have to work 10 times harder than their counterparts to achieve a similar goal. There is some truth in that. It's certainly some truth in that adversity is against you, because you're not what they expected to walk through the door even. Sometimes your name doesn't even look like your name. I'm sure there's been plenty of times when people didn't assume that my name would be Alan, but it is. So kind of having that, right? That these are the types of things. Oh, your name's Alan? Or I'll just throw some moments at you. Or walking into like my dining commons and someone walking up to me and saying, the moment, the music, you better never let it go. I'm like, I'm Alan. So, so kind of challenging. And granted, I do like some Biggie Smalls, but you're not going to try to use that to challenge or degrade my Blackness. That's not what I'm going to tolerate. So no, I'm going to say, hi, my name's Alan, and I'm going to shake your hand. So now you can use that moment in music. So that is what I have had to navigate for years. Not the in your face type of discrimination, but the things that you have to really, really, really be attuned. You really, really got to be listening. You really, really got to watch for it to really catch it. That has rooted me in developing this voice. Having to talk about my history beyond being an African American in this country, for example, was another thing I experienced in higher education too. Having everyone in the room go around, where are you from? Alan, where are you from? Well, I don't know where my ancestors are beyond America, right? You don't know what African tribe your family comes from, things like that, or just like different things that I've experienced. I would say that I can go on and on about these things, but I would say that these experiences have taught me that I owe it to myself and to the communities that I belong to put my best foot forward. That beyond my voice empowering myself, my voice is empowering the communities that I belong to as well. So after a experience at my campus, I started the mental movement, not the mental movement, the movement, not the mental movement. It was the movement at Westfield State University to challenge discrimination. And even at that time, having a professor touch me on my shoulder and say, Alan Michael, you're just waking up to this. Oh, really? I'm just waking up to being Black, because last time I checked, I've been Black every day of my life. But let you know, I'm just waking up to it. But these experiences don't put me in a place of aggression, because that's what's expected. I'm just going to show you how I'm going to deal with it. It's going to be with my mind. So the mental movement, because what's movement if you're not using your mind? Because what you thought I was going to do, I'm not going to do. I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to do what you would probably do, but better than you do it, because you thought that I was incapable of doing it. So being rooted, my purpose, being rooted in both Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, is that I recognize that peace is law, but militant is necessary. That we have to stand up for each other. Black, white, brown, yellow, all of us have to stand up united together to fight against adversity, discrimination, gaps in education, pipelines, all these things that are holding people down, all these things that are put out there to make you believe that you're less than, that you don't belong, that you don't have purpose. Who's deciding these things? Because it's now time to shift that narrative. So my work is rooted in recreating story arcs. I ask my clients, who do you want to be in your story? Do you want to be the hero or the villain in your story? Because you're the one writing it.
Final question for you. How do their philosophies show up in your work, your message, and your mission?
Yeah, I take it back to John Fuller, Urban Education Program. Each one, reach one, each one, teach one. And that's what it's about, that it really takes a village to make an impact and change. Yes, everyone's voice matters, but we can do so much more if we come together, united, and with a cause to say that enough is enough, and that today has to be better than yesterday, and that tomorrow is definitely going to be better than yesterday, because we have decided that we are worthy. We have decided that we matter. We have decided that we care. We have decided that our voices deserve to be heard, no matter what. And that is a non-negotiable. That I'm not going to negotiate my value with you. I'm not going to let you tell me my worth. I'm going to tell you that. And if you don't respect that, that's fine. That just means that you don't have a seat at my table. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. So I empower my clients to have their authentic voice, to stand up for what they believe in, to fight against adversity, to say enough is enough, to recognize where they might have challenges, but never, ever to declare that something is wrong with them. I never use, I hate, what's the problem, what's wrong with you. My lens, how can I support you? How can we make this better? How can your voice be heard in this moment? These are the types of words that I choose to use to empower my clients each and every day.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you like to leave with our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you via social media and your websites and all that other good stuff.
All right. So, my leaving word, I thank you for listening to my rambling. I'm very passionate about these topics. So, these questions definitely, I hope that the work that you all see from me, you see that I'm more than just preaching here, Professor C, but I actually stand in this purpose, that I walk in this purpose. So what I want to leave you with, a quote from Professor C, me, is, in order to see different, one must do different. As simple as it sounds. In order to see different, one must do different. So if you're stuck in the same patterns, nothing's going to change. But if you want something to change, then you have to take the steps to make it change. But you have to ask yourself, why is that change necessary? What does that do for me? And how does that impact the communities that I belong to? So that's what I want to leave you with there. For my practices, I am taking clients through Miracles Happen Therapy through Sondermind, and the Wellness Collective through Headway. It's too long to kind of say how to get the link, but if you go on to one of the search engines and type in the Wellness Collective through Headway or Alan Michael Chess Professor C, you will find that there is a profile link to get to those pages. I also have a Mental Movement LLC website. It's www.thevisionofprofessorc.com. I have a TikTok account called Visions of Professor C, and a YouTube page called Professor C, The Mental Movement. I release content every single week on different topics. I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you look up Alan Michael Chess Professor C on LinkedIn. You'll find me there as well. What you notice on my social media platforms is that I release some type of a speech, a poem, a dance, something similar to what you heard me say today. I do that. I live this every day. Once a week, I am dropping some type of content. Last night, I actually dropped the Daddy poem to support brothers in my African American brothers, my Black and brown brothers in Boston who have an event called I Wish My Dad, to talk about navigating the father-son, the Black experience for fathers and sons in this country. So stuff like that. Also, I have stuff I post rooted in trauma and healing and fighting against adversity and finding your purpose and mastering self-respect. Just know that if you're on one of my pages, that I hope that you take away something from something that I said here or on one of my pages. And I thank you all for your time.
Well, before I close, let me. I want to ask you when I do close the show, if you could like hang around for a few minutes afterwards. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
we can do that.
So I want to thank you, for spending this time with us because it was definitely worth it, and I'm sure that you have actually put a lot on the minds of our audience because mental health is so important, and I want to thank you for that. For those of you that are watching on all of our channels, especially our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enable all notifications, I ask you to please support us by subscribing and enabling all notifications where you're able to get the shows live, and you'll also be able to go and watch all of our previous recorded shows with all of our great guests, with all of the great messages that they have left. So in this closing monologue, I want to leave you guys with this. Tonight, we witnessed the power of purpose, the courage of vulnerability, and the brilliance of a man who has dedicated his life to healing minds, uplifting communities, and rewriting narratives. Professor C reminds us that wellness is not just a luxury. It is a necessity, a right, and a pathway to liberation. In a world that often fractures us, he teaches unity. In a world that silences us, he teaches expression. In a world that wounds us, he teaches healing. His message echoes the legacies of Dr. King and Malcolm X, two giants who believed in the transformation of the mind, the elevation of the people, and the promise of a better tomorrow. And as Professor C always says, the sun will come out tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of the movement. This is America in Black and White.